everyone, and welcome back. And here we are, and we are covering this web development bootcamp of 80 hours content. And I'm covering everything about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, basic, intermediate, advanced. So we are covering lots of these concepts together. And this is my channel, and I have covered already the basic HTML, basic JavaScript, really, with all these hands-on application, not just theoretical concept. We are doing everything in depth about core JavaScript concept. Now I will be starting about how you can onboard yourself with the JavaScript intermediate course. So in JavaScript intermediate, we are going to cover lots of basic concepts. Whatever we have done in the core JavaScript, now we are going to build on top of that. We are going to understand a lot of JavaScript concept, and all those things we are going to do with the code snippets. That is what we are going to use here. So let's get started. We are going to cover all the concepts of JavaScript at intermediate level. So basics, we already know the function, object, array, string, primitive types, how to write a simple conditional blocks, and basic building blocks of JavaScript, where you are writing conditional loops, playing with a string, playing with the different data types, playing with the functions, function calling another function. We also worked with the HTML and the DOM APIs, fetch APIs, web APIs and all. Now we will cover on top of that some little advanced or intermediate concepts of JavaScript.
Hello and welcome everyone. And in this video we are going to talk about array in JavaScript. Okay, so what are the array? So array are like a collection in JavaScript or a type in JavaScript which is used to store the information, a collection of information. So like if you wanted to store a number of homogeneous type, so the only constraint you have is you will be storing the information of homogeneous type, like for array. Here you are storing some numbers. Okay, so this is the array of numbers. Maybe there can be a string of array. Okay, so this can be a string array, this can be a boolean array, this can be a number array. So first let's talk about what is array, the capital A array. I'm talking about this. So array is actually a function in JavaScript. If you do a type of capital A array, it will give you that it is a function in JavaScript. So everything in JavaScript is a first class function. So it is a part of native code, and how we create a new object of this function. So consider this is a function, right? This is the function. Now this is already defined in JavaScript, and now if you wanted to create an object of this function, then we can do something like this. Using new keyword, we can create an array, or we can just simply just type like this, and we will just write this expression. So this is also an array. If you do type of array, it will be an object, because array is an object. So either we can create an array object like this, or either we can create array object like array equal to using new constructor. But people don't do something like this. They can just easily create an array like this. So array is a collection of homogeneous data types, can be a number array, string array, can be a boolean array. And here we can just create our array simply directly. So if I'm creating the number array something like this, right? Now what all different methods I can apply? So if you do a type of object is array, and how this object is created from which particular function. I'm just talking few things which I haven't talked till now, but it will help you when I'm talking the advanced topics. So here you can see console.log object, which is an array, and this particular object is created from what particular function. If you see, all the methods are here. So I will talk about this piece later, but you can see what all different methods you can apply. This is array object, and on the array object you can apply all these methods: concat, constructor, copy within, and all. Okay, the constructor of this particular object is representing the array function from which it is created. Let's leave it if you're not able to understand it right now. So here var array equal to just a simple iteration. Okay, now let's talk about capital A array. So this is used to be a function, right? So what all different methods it is providing us? You can see all the array prototype methods. You can see array.prototype dot. Here you can see all the methods. So these all the methods can be applied to an array. We will talk about these prototypes, functions later, but for the initial understanding, all these methods are available, and you can do a find, filter, fill, map, filter, ForEach, reduce. All these methods can be applied on an array. So here I did array dot, right? All these methods are applied because this array is an object of array function. Again, this array is a function which is having some prototypes. All these methods are there, right? And whenever you are writing this expression, what you are doing, you are actually creating an object of array function, and all the methods are available here. You can see constructor, copy within, entries, fill, ForEach. All these methods are here. So forget about Proto and prototype for now. So we are declaring array like this. We are just putting some values inside it. So this is a homogeneous collection of data you are entering. Now what all different methods you can apply? On array, you can apply the length of that array, or there are a lot of different methods: push, pop, all these things. So if you wanted to get the array of the length of this array, then array dot length. What it will give you? It will give you the length of the array, which is 5. Okay. Similarly, there are other methods like push, pop, unshift, shift, splice, slice. We will talk about all these methods one by one. So if I'm doing push new character 9, new digit 9, so let's do this here. So if you do array.length, what you will get, array.length will give you the length of that array, which is 5. Now if you do, you can see all the methods are here. Push means adding a new element to the array. Now if you do array.length, which is increased, right? Similarly, you can do a pop. Pop means popping the array element, so it works like a stack, JavaScript stack. You can see pop 9. So these are different methods. You can just do array.shift, like so it will pop the first element from the array. Similarly, if you keep popping up, it will keep popping up the elements from the starting point until unless it is undefined. Okay. Okay, I cannot write clear here. Okay. So this is how we'll talk about the array. So the type of array, if you just this array, then type of this array is an object. If you want to do console.dir, what you will see. Now here, try to understand this part. console.dir array. So you already know that this is an object, right? So this is an array of 4 element. Now object has a proto and functions will have a prototype. So what you will see in the proto of this object, you will see all the methods, and the object constructor is actually pointing to the function who created this object. So we are creating the same object can be created with the help of new array, right? This also do the same thing. New array, it is creating the object of the array functions, and same we are doing with a single line. Okay, so this is about the array. Next we'll talk about the for in and for of loop in JavaScript. Hello and welcome back. So let's talk about the last method, splice. So we have this array and which is having a lot of elements. Okay, when you do splice array dot splice, so would you pass two arguments, argument 1 and argument 2, maybe argument single argument only. So argument 1 is splice means you are actually removing something from the array, right? So argument 1 means at what, from what position, how many elements you are removing. So argument, if argument 1 is 0, then from 0th element, and argument 2 is 2, then from the 0th element you are actually removing 2 elements from an array. So that is splice, right? So if you do, so this is how it works. Argument 02 means from the 0th position you are removing the 2 elements, and you can also create a duplicate from this splice method by passing 0. Means I'm not removing anything, just give me the existing array same as same again. So this is how you can create a duplicate of an array, right? So this is how the splice works. Now consider I created array like this. Sorry. And now you are saying array delete array 1. So it's like deleting a property from an object, right? So you are actually deleting this property. Then what should be the impact on array.length? It will still be same. For your information, it will just show this as an empty value, or like this. Right. I mean, this is a little tricky that how the deletion of properties happens on an array. Okay, so this is all about the different prototype methods. You can also look out at MDN Mozilla Developer Network documentation about JavaScript, or you can explore more. The reduce, filter, and map, these are like considered important methods which you should be aware of, because there we are passing callback as a function, right? We are passing callback function, and then that callback function is iterating and giving us the result. In future we will be removing those callback functions with the arrow functions, similarly like this. So today we are writing the map function like this. Here we are writing function, then we are actually returning I plus 1, something like this. So in future we can just remove this to the arrow function, and it's a single line return statement, so no need of parentheses and the brackets. So the sweet and short syntax which we will deal in the ES6 about the arrow function. So that's it for now. Hello and welcome back everyone. So here I wanted to put a code snippet for the reduce functions so we can talk more about the accumulator. So here I have the number, right, which is an array, and I can hit the reduce method because that is available in the array.prototype.reduce. So I'm doing numbers.reduce, and these are the 4 arguments which I was talking about: accumulator, the current value which is initialized with 0, the current index which is the IA index which will increase 1 by 1, and the array, the input you are passing. Okay, so what we are doing, we are just printing the accumulator, and we are doing accumulator plus current value. So what will happen, initially the accumulator will be 0 and console.log will show 0. In the next iteration accumulator will be 10, okay, and the initial value will be 0 plus 10 is 10, then 10 plus 30, then 40 plus 60, then 60 plus 50, right? How this complete iteration will work. I added actually the extra element. Let's keep it. So there are only 3 elements, 10, 30, 60. So you will get the total sum of 100. Okay, this is how the reduce function works, where accumulator keeps passing the value to the next iteration. Okay, so this is about the reduce function in depth. Welcome back everyone. So let's talk about the array.keys and array.values method. So both methods are giving us the iterator object or iterable object. So what do you think about an object, array object? Array is an object, right? So how actually the array object look like internally? So from the above array it look like this: 0 colon 6, 1 colon 7 and 2 colon 8, right? This is how the array works when we look array as an object. So what are the keys? Keys are 0, 1, 2, values are 6, 7, 8. So we have already have object.keys methods, object.entries, I mean the capital O object I'm talking about, capital O object function prototype methods, these are, and we use object.keys, object values, object.entries. Similarly, in the array prototype there are two methods, keys and values. So object array.keys will return an iterator. So I can run the for of loop onto this, for I of just run the iterator on this. So array.keys, or you can just call it simply array dot keys, and you can just get each and every array keys. So what are the keys? You will get the keys 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. These will be the keys, and it is returning the iterable object. So you need to run the for of loop, which internally do the dot next. So forget about the for of in-depth for now. It is just running the for of loop onto the iterable object which we have received using array.keys. So when you do the array.keys, you will get this array iterator object, and we are running on to that iterator object. Okay, similarly we can do the array.values. In that case it is just going to return us the values, console.log value, right? So that is the only difference between the values and keys methods of array.prototype. Okay, similarly there is object.keys methods are there, object.values and object.entries. So it also works in the same way. Object.keys will give you the list of keys in an object. So like if I have the object, what I will get if I do object.keys, just do object.keys onto this, you will get an array of key are x and y, right? Similarly, if you do object.keys object.values, then you will get an array of values which is 10 and 50. And whenever so it's a values, whenever you do the entries, then you will get an array of key value pairs. So most probably it will be like this: x10, y50. Okay, key value pair when you do the entries. So that was about the object. We have already talked about the function dot prototype, array dot prototype dot keys, array dot prototype dot values. Okay, that's it. Thanks everyone. Hi everyone, welcome back. Let's talk about array.of method, which is plain and simple. Whatever you pass in the argument, it will convert that into the iterable array. So this is the extension of array.from. So in array.of, if you are passing 1 comma 2 comma 5 comma 6, it will give you the array of this all these values. right? It is awesome, right? Whatever the string you are passing, it is going to give you the array. So just pass the unique and distinct values which can be iterated, so it will convert them into an array. Like these integers, you can convert them into the integer array. These are the strings, right? You can convert them into the string array. So this is how array.of works. Now the important part which is left in the array prototype methods are the array.prototype.values and keys. That we'll talk in the next video. Hello and welcome back everyone. Let's talk about array.from and array.includes methods. Okay, so I created an array. So array.include is straightforward. Sorry, I'm talking about array.from first. So this is like you created. So array.from is actually a method to convert the collection elements into the array. So consider you just created one string, right? And now what you wanted to do, you wanted to split these characters into the array. So what you can do, array.from and pass this args. So what you will get an array of all these characters. And same as like this, right? So if your argument which you are passing is iterable, then it convert that into the array. So array.from is a method to convert your variables, convert your arguments into the iterable array, right? It can be a collection of DOM element, it can be a collection of string, it can be a collection of characters like string you are passing, and you are getting array out of it. Earlier, how we used to do it using args dot, we used to do a split, and then so it used to give us the same kind of a result where you are getting the characters array, right? Now you can just directly do that. Dot from is used for converting the iterable objects into the array. Includes straightforward. It is just checking if that element is there or not in the array, right? So here what it will check, it will check array dot includes 6. Okay, that is true, it is there. If you talk about 9, it's not there, so obviously it is a false. Okay, so these both the methods are important and we use it at different places. It can be a string array where you have, sorry, okay, now you are checking hello, then it will return true, otherwise it will return false. It will return false. Okay, so that's it about both these methods. Hello and welcome back everyone. And in this video, we are going to talk about another important function, which is the ForEach, and it's being used everywhere. So whenever you need to do the iteration onto the array or any iterable object, you always use the ForEach method. Like you did document.query selector all, so it will give you all the array elements, all the DOM elements having the button elements. So consider like it's going to be the list of all the divs, comma separated, and then you are actually iterating on to all those buttons array and dot for each. So it is also the kind of a callback mechanism, something like this. So once you have the array with all the elements, then you can run the for each method on that, and it accepts a callback function. And you can just do with iteration whatever you wanted to do with I element. Okay, because this is for purely for iteration, where you can just
do some do anything with the iterated element. Like here we are running the for each loop onto the buttons, and to each and every button I'm adding an event listener, and this handle click is defined here. So I'm using this for each method to add this event listener to all the buttons exist with the query selector button, right? This is straightforward, right? Because I'm getting all the buttons. Now I am iterating using the for each loop, and I'm doing it. So for each loop is better than using the for loop in JavaScript, and try to use a for each loop. It gives you the iterated element and then do whatever you wanted to do. It's just for iteration. It's not changing the original array elements. Okay, that's it about for each. Hello and welcome everyone. Let's talk about the reduce function, which is another important function. So reduce method works with two parameters. First is accumulator and the second is the current value. Okay. So it uses the four parameter, but two of them are optional. So we'll talk about them two only. So reducer function will return the single value based on accumulator, and that single value will be passed to the next iteration of the reduce function. So you can see I'm trying to run this reduce functions to get the sum of the array. So we were having this array. So this is the array, right? If I hit the reduce method on this array, then the first accumulator value will be 4 because the current value is 0. Then the next time this accumulator value will be 7. Then 7 will be added to the 2. Then 9 will be added with 1. So this is how the sum is happening, and it will return the sum of all the elements. Okay, so and this is how actually the reduce function works, and reduce function is powerful whenever you need to send the value of the previous accumulator to the next value, like iterating onto the array where you wanted to pass the previous result to the next iteration. Okay, so we'll talk about other methods like includes, find, index of, fill, and keys and values. Okay. Hello and welcome back. So let's talk about the map method. We already talked about the find and filter. Find who is going to give us the single value. Once the criteria matches, it return the value, and exit. It's not going to iterate onto the whole array. Similarly, the filter is actually based on the filter criteria. It will iterate the whole array, and it will give us the new array without modifying the existing array. Now the next one is a map. So map is also similar to the filter, but it is giving us more of capability to modify the arguments of an array and creating the new array. It's not going to modify anything in the existing array. So let's like this here. We are actually adding 10. So you can see the new array will be 14, 15, 16, 17. Let's just right. So it will create a new array by changing some values onto the existing. I mean by appending something into the existing, like we are adding 10. So it will create a new array and add 10 to each and every elements. So this is also example of immutable behavior of map and filter. They are not modifying the existing array, always creating the new array. Okay. So in next video, let's talk about the reduce function, which is important one. Hi everyone. So let's talk about our first method, which is a find. So the find method let you to iterate through an array and execute the specific function you are passing as a callback. So all the prototype methods are accepting the callback as a function argument and then executing the instruction. So like this, array of numbers there can be array of numbers here, and array of numbers is having obviously the number elements. Okay, and what you are doing, you are actually trying to find the even number and store it inside a variable. Okay, so this is you're actually, so it's not going to change anything. It's you are assigning and you are actually getting all the elements which are even number and storing that into the another array, because it will be returning an array and you are assigning that to the first number. So same thing is for odd number. So find is just the basic find mechanism you are doing, and it will be returning the new array here, and you are getting the first even number and the first even number. Yeah. So this even number will give you the first even number. This will give you the first odd number. Okay. So this is the code snippet for the find function. Now what you are getting from this? You are actually getting only the single element, the find number. So first even number and first odd number. Now let's talk about the filter. So filter is actually different, and these filter, map, reduce all are coming in a separate set of methods which we can call as immutable, right? So why we are calling them immutable? If you talk about the filter and you are saying if number is greater than, what do you say, 10, then only return that. So what it will do, this is array of numbers, right? You are running a filter onto that, and what the filter will do, filter will return those elements which are greater than 10. So you are actually creating the new array, and here I think there are only two elements which are greater than 10. So it has given you the new array without modifying the existing one. So this is the immutable behavior of immutable means which is not getting changed. So the existing array of number, we are not changing anything in this, we are just doing a filter and returning the new array. So filter is immutable, and the filter is, it's the same, you just write some condition here, and based on that condition you are actually filtering the data from this particular array, right? So this is the filter method. The next method after the find, so find is used to find a particular element based on criteria, and it was returning a single element from that. This is going to return you, it is iterating, and it will return you all the elements which are passing that criteria. Okay. Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome back to my playlist where I was talking about the JavaScript. Okay, so in this video we are going to talk about array prototype methods. So in JavaScript, whenever you do on the console array.prototype, then you can see all the huge list of methods, right? Where you can say find, filter, map, reduce, for each, map, uh, from, find, index, fill. All these methods are there, which are defined in the native array function as a prototype. So whenever we create a new array object, we got a opportunity, or we got a it's like we got opportunity to deal with all these methods. I mean, we can access all of them. So once you create a new array object and object dot, you will see all these methods, find, filter, map, reduce, all these methods will be there because they are already defined in the prototype of array functions. So now those same functions will also be available to all the objects you are creating from the array functions, or using just creating a simple array like this, or x equal to array. Either you do something like this, or you do var object equal to new array. So these all the methods will be available to all these objects. Okay, so let's talk about these one by one just for a quick introduction. Find to find an element, filter to filter the data based on some criteria and give you the new set of data, new set of array. It is not going to change the existing array. Similarly, map is used for iteration and changing the values. Reduce is a separate case, which it is having accumulator and initial value, and it actually keeps sending the value from the previous iteration to the next iteration. For each is like a for in loop, which is just iterating on to the array object. Every includes checks if array is having that elements or not. Earlier we used to do index of, right? So no need to do that, always use includes. Array.from to convert the collections into the array. find index, fill values and keys. Okay, these are all the methods. So let's talk one by one all these methods. Hello and welcome everyone. So in this video we will talk about the split and the sort function or the join function. Okay, so these are the things we are going to talk about: split, join, and maybe sort. Okay, so this is the variable I created. Now I'm doing a split. So first I will talk about basic sample. So this is a string I created. When you do x dot split and you pass nothing, you just pass this, then it is going to give you the array, right? And consider if you are having a string complete sentence, right? And then you are going to give a split based on the space. Then what it will do, it will create the array of three string I am Tarun because you provided a space. So your space is the split criteria you have already provided. So it will split the string based on the split criteria you specified. Similarly, like I have a string which is having the comma. Now you can just specify the comma, it will split based on this criteria. You can see I got all these three strings. Now after the split you can also sort this because now you have the array, right? Now you can play around the array and now it is sorted based on the first character of the strings we have. So this will give us the array of strings because this is a string, this is a sentence, a normal string. Now we did a split based on the space criteria, so it will give us the three string, and then it is also doing the sorting on top of it. So it will apply the sorting there, right? So this is a splice, and splice is, you can see the powerful, or you can see whatever the splitter you are putting, you can split based on that, right? So like I'm putting this splitter, then I can pass this, so it will split based on that only, and I'm doing a sorting also on that. So this is how we do it. Now after sorting you wanted to join also this, then there is a method join based on a particular thing, right? I wanted to join it back with the same character, right? So what I did a sorting. I did a first convert the string into the string array, then did the sorting, then again converted back it to the string with a join. So consider you wanted to do the reverse as string. How you can do that? So what you need to do, for a string is equal to, right? Now you wanted to reverse it. So str, so split based on simple base criteria dot, now it's array, you can do reverse, and then you can do the join, right? Let's see this here. So I created this variable here, str.split. So what I got this array, right? Dot reverse. So what I got, it has reversed the thing, and then you can join it back. So you got your original array, original string, right? So this is how we can do the reverse of a string in the basic words, right? So what it does, first what we did, str.split. So it will create an array of these characters and blah blah blah. Now what you did the reverse. Reverse will obviously will reverse this array. You will get a and the remaining characters, right? Then when you do the join, it will join it and it will give you the final string in the reverse order.
whatever we have the left part, right? So this is the magic of string split and reverse. You can split based on some criteria, like you can pass the comma, use some word, some symbol, and based on that it will split that particular string into an array. Then you do the reverse, you do the sorting, you can apply all the array prototype methods onto the array, because now you have converted the string into the array, right? So split is convert the array into the string, and join will revert it back to the string. Hello and welcome everyone. So we can talk about the string prototype method. Like we have a lot of methods. Character at, what it will do, it will return the character exactly at the specified index. So if you just do, I will talk about the example also here. Like you just wrote hello. Now you are doing character at the first location. So what it will be, it will give you h, small h. Similarly, we have other functions, the character code at, concat. So let's see them here. I will just list down all these here. Concat is there. Split, another important. Then we have the end with index of includes is an important one. Then we have last index of so these are, I'm just listing down only the important ones which we are actually using at most of the places. Replace start with substring. Okay, two uppercase, two lowercase, and trim we always use to remove the white spaces. Value of two string. Okay, these are actually a lot of sets are there, right? So if we just talk about string dot prototype dot, I will go one by one. So value of gives us value, trim will remove the spaces, to uppercase will change it to the upper characters, lowercase it will change all the characters to the lowercase. Okay, substring will check if the existing string is a substring of another string. Start with split or small slice, search, replace, repeat. From the name it is clear what they are doing. Right, so we'll talk just about a few string prototype methods, like let's see, this is hello dot split. Right, so what split is doing, split is actually converting this into an array object. Okay, and this is always being used a lot. Split, like whatever the string you are having, you'll be able to split that. Okay, so you can convert the string into the array using this. And includes, this particular string is this including O. That is true, right? It is not including C, which is false. Similarly, to start with, is the string starting with X? No, right? But the string starting with H, that is true. So similarly, what else? Let's cover few more. Index of is the same. Length, it will give us the length. Okay. Repeat, replace, all these methods. Trim will remove the white spaces. ToString will convert any objects to the string, it's already a string. Substring to check if a string is a part subset of another string. Okay. font size, constructor, character at index. All these are the basic string prototype methods. So you can just go through it, just hit the Chrome console and try to see one by one what all these methods are doing. Hello and welcome everyone. So in this video we are going to talk about hoisting of variables and hoisting of functions in JavaScript. So hoisting means okay, this can be explained better way using this example. So consider we have this example where you declared a variable a 70 and you created a function. There also you're trying to access the value of a and also have the same variable declared inside that function. Then according to you, what should be the output of get value? I'm getting undefined. Why? Because hoisting is happening here. So you can see 870, that is fine. This is in the global scope. And here you declare a same variable in function. So whatever you declare, whatever the variable you declare, like var a, var b, whatever, that is getting hoisted to the top of the function declaration. Till this point, here also your function know that it has a and b declared somewhere. Okay, so your function already know that there is a variable a and b declared somewhere, but I don't have that value right now, but that is declared. So you cannot just say that a doesn't even exist. A exists, b also exists, so it will just give you directly undefined. It will not get the value from the global scope if the same variable is declared inside the function. Okay, so if I change it to x and y and trying to access global log a, then obviously you will get the value 70, because then there is no chance, right? You will be getting this value from the global scope, which is 70. But here, if a is also left, a is also there in the function, in that case, it will override the values whatever you are getting from the global scope. It will not even allow you to look outside if the same variable is declared in the function scope, because whatever you declare inside a function, that all the things get hoisted to the top of the function. So till this point, your function knows, yes, I have these variables in my body. So I don't need to look outside for the same variable. I mean, I don't need to look outside for the same variable, because that's already there somewhere in my function body. So A is 90, B is 50. And whenever you are doing console.log A, function at this particular time knows I have A defined, but I don't have a value of A till this particular line. I have the value after this line. So that is fine if you can do it like this. But I know for sure that A is there. So I will not accept the value coming from the outside the global scope. Okay, this is hoisting, because whatever you are declaring, that is hoisted to the top of the function declaration at the first line, and function is knowing that something is there, is already there. I don't need to look for those variables outside the function body, right? This is the hoisting. Same hoisting happens like for the functions. So functions can be called before they are even being declared. How this happens, like, not, this cannot happen in any language, but this happens in JavaScript. Why? Because functions are hoisted to the top of the page, right? Nothing is breaking. You are able to call get value function at this particular line. You don't have a function, right? Do you see any function declared before this particular line? No. The function was defined after the calling of the function. and this is little trivial, right? I mean, this should never happen, but this is we are allowing, right? So this is because this function is getting hoisted to the top of the page. If we just try to do a console.log, oh, let me check what is the problem. So this is the get value. Yeah, you see, I'm able to get the definition of get value, which is actually of type function. So how that happens? Because this function definition is being hoisted to the top. That's why this function is available here also. So your complete page knows, yes, get value is defined somewhere. Similarly, get value A, get value B, which so there are two functions, right? Get value 1 or 2. Both will get hoisted to the top of the function, and you will get the value of both of the functions, and then you can call them. Call the first function before defining them, call the another function before defining them. So this is called the variable hoisting and the function hoisting in JavaScript. Hello and welcome everyone. In this video we are going to talk about scope in JavaScript, like the variable scope. What is the life of a variable in a particular block or a particular function, or maybe in the global scope. So consider we are creating one variable. Okay, now we are writing a function, and here what I'm doing, here I have added name again, and I'm just trying the playing around it. And here I'm calling the getName function, and again trying to do console.log the name. So what do you think, what will the output and how this will get executed? So let's see that. You already know what's going to happen. So console.log name is TK Sharma and TK Sharma. So the thing is, you are declaring a variable name Tarun here. That is fine. Now, inside a function, you have added another property name, the TK Sharma in the function. And now you are doing console.log name. So the second one is fine. Second one is going to be the TK Sharma. But what about the first one? If you see this expression closely, you didn't declare the variable. You actually, what you are doing, you are actually adding this variable to the global object directly. So whenever you say x equal to 30 or 90, it actually gets added in the window object. Okay, so if you are not using the var keyword and creating the variables, then it directly gets added to the window object, and that same thing happening here. So if you do the console.log, you can see the name is inside a window object. Let's do the cleanup here. Now you can see the global one. So now you will see the scope here. I can explain this in a better way with a zoom. So yeah, this is available outside of the function. This is available something inside the function, right? So console.log will look for the name property inside the function only. So it found it, right? TK Sharma. And now when you call that name, it will give you that value. But what about console.log name? Because the scope now it is looking not looking for the particular function, it is looking the variable name inside a global scope, and it found it somewhere above the function, right? So this name is available and it will be able to print that value. Okay, so whatever you are declaring inside a function is available in the function only. Okay, to consider this example, which is the best one. So you are creating a variable. What do you think? What will be the value here? Even you are not declaring. And let's call the get name. Right? So when you call the get name function, you can see that you are getting undefined. So I'm talking about this particular function. This is what we created. Now I'm calling this function get name. So it is giving us the undefined, right? So it is not giving any error even if you just trying to access the hello property before it is being declared, right? So just a basic thing about the scope, that in the function it will try to access everything inside the function. So whenever you try to access some variable, it will look into the functions, and whatever the variable you declare, variable has a complete scope from this point till this point. This is actually the scope of any variable you declare inside a function. I mean, there is a variable hoisting also, which we'll talk about in the next video. So every variable has this much scope, and whenever you are not using war keyword with any variable, that directly gets added to the window object, and whenever you access it anywhere, then you will get that value only if you are trying to access it from the global scope. Here you will get a TKS term, right? But here you will get the value term. Okay, so whatever is in the function, that is a functional scope. Whatever outside the function, that will get added in the global scope. Like I'm using the war keyword now, it will not get added in the window object, but outside this function, if I try to access name, then obviously I will get the value term. But inside the function, if I'm trying to access the name, then I will get the TKS term. And before the declaration of that and assigning the value, I will get that value as undefined. Okay, that's it about the variable scope and the declarations of the variables. Welcome back everyone. So in this video let's talk about the return from the function. So right now I'm not returning anything from this function. So what I will get? I will get undefined. So let's just try to return something here. So here I'm returning true. So if whenever I'm calling this function, then I will get a true, right? This function is returning true. So it's not necessary that each and every function should return a value. You can return a number, you can return a boolean, you can return an object from a function, or you can also return a function from a function. Okay, so that is the definition of callback function, which we will talk later. But functions can exist in different ways. So let's call this function add. I'm passing a, okay, and then I'm having a property inside this function, this dot add b. don't get scared with the name of this object here. And here what I'm doing, I'm returning a plus b, and b I'm passing here. Okay, and from here I'm returning right. This is what we are doing. What this function is returning, this function is returning another function. Or instead of binding this function, you can have a expression at b. Let's make some difference here at b, right? So this is like there is some outer function, some inner function, and how will I call this function? So when I will call this function add, I'm passing 2. So what I will be getting? I will be getting this add b function, right? So let's try to play with this function and we will try to understand how the function returns. So whenever I'm writing the function, so what all things are happening here? So what is this fn1? fn1 is actually representing another function which is returned from the outer function. You can see this, and there are 3 scope because the closure is also added and it is having one object property which is having a2. Let's talk about that later. But here I'm calling add function, so add function is returning another function. So this fn1 is representing a function returned by calling another function. So function can return another function also, right? Now you can call this function again because now we are getting the value fn1 and passed another argument 3. So in this case you will get the value 5 because now it's going to add the value, right? So function can return another function, function can return any primitive type, or function or just a function doesn't return anything. You can write a function which is not doing anything, which is not returning any value. It's not necessary that function always return. They can return the void, it means nothing, right? So here this function is actually returning value which we understood, but it can be simply something like this. It's not doing anything. You can do whatever you want, right? So whenever you wanted to return something, then just return that function. Here it can be, this can be a variable, this can be a function, this can be an object, or this can be some null or undefined, whatever you see, think of. We generally don't return null or undefined. We return only object, functions, primitives, true, false, numbers or something. And then while getting this, so consider there is nothing like an inner function, we are just calling this, and here I'm returning true. So in this value I will get the true value, and in the later I can check if value is true, then do this, do that, right? So you can return an object also which is being calculated by something else. So here this is the x object and you are assigning a to it, whatever you are passing. So it is creating that object and it is returning that object. Or instead of that you can write the same code in a single line, right? Okay, so you can also return a function from a function. That is something a little bit trivial or tricky because we haven't talked about all those kind of scenarios. So consider this is a function, right? This is taking one argument cb. In that case, so here you are doing some calculation. We are just calculating x equal to 9 plus some 7, and here you are calling cb and passing the argument x. So what this cb is? Cb is nothing but some argument and you are actually trying to call that. So from the outer function you are actually returning another function. So how you'll call this function? It's a little tricky, right? Outer, and this is going to be a function, right? Okay, while calling this outer function, you will get the value of x. This is a typical callback exists in JavaScript, and we are going to talk about callback in the array prototype, ForEach, filter, map, reduce, all these methods. So outer I am calling, and I'm passing function as an argument. This is a single argument, which is function, right? And what this function is doing, this function is passing one variable. This function is returning one variable, and we are just printing that. Okay, so this also exists something like this, right? So if you think about console.dir about the outer, what it is having function, and it is the same normal function, right? But while calling this function, let's call this function. When you will call it, then you are actually not specifying callback, right? Correct? Either you check if callback is not a type of function, then return null or something, right? So you will get an error. So what we can do, this is the function we created. Now we are actually trying to call it. So we need to pass a function argument, or either create another function and pass it. Right? Now in the outer function, pass the add function. Okay, now it will work because you are passing now a function as an argument, right? Now the better definition is, let's add a function here, and what it is doing, .log x, right? We are getting the summation of 9 plus 7, right? This is how we are actually calling the function, by passing function as an argument. And this function, so this is the parameter, right? And here we are calling it. So this function is returning another function, and with some argument, and we are defining that. Okay, so if you talk about a simple set timeout, how it look like, set interval, set timeout, these all are accepting one function as an argument and the time. So what they are saying, they will execute this function after this particular time, particular set of time, right? Set interval, all these are actually callback functions. This is a set timeout is already defined in JavaScript. If you just do console.dir set timeout, why the autocomplete doesn't work here? So set timeout is already a native function. Okay, so this is a native function, and what it is doing, it is accepting two arguments. One is the function which you wanted to execute, and another is a timeout, milliseconds. Okay, similarly we have a set interval. All these methods are doing the same thing. Okay, that's it. Thanks everyone. Welcome back everyone. So in this video we are going to talk about the argument in the function. Okay, so there are a lot of variations around it, like you created a function hello, and you are passing some arguments, right? And you are expecting us to track all these arguments. These are called arguments, right? So let's write some exercise, and let's try to do it. So this is the function we created, and these are the arguments. So while calling this function, what I will do, I will just call this function something like this. I will pass the argument, right? This is how typically functions works. But let's try to see the other side of it. So I'm writing function hello, and I'm passing the argument xy. Is there any way I can get all these objects? So let's call this hello function, and you can see you got something, right? I'm doing arguments in the console.log. So this argument is having the values which I am passing. Okay, so this is the argument I am passing, x and y. So let's try to dig into this console.dir argument. Actually, this is actually the keyword using which we can grab all the arguments being passed into the function. So argument 0, there is no any argument being passed right now. So let's call pass some argument. Right now you can see there are two arguments. So this argument is an array being used inside a function to calculate the number of argument which you are passing. You can even forget about declaring a function like this. Okay, what you can do, you just call the function. Now you can see the arguments 5, right? So this argument is an object, array object, which is available inside a function, which represents how many argument are you passing while calling this function. In any other language like Java or any other language, if you pass a function with 5 argument, if there is no matching function exist which accepts the 5 argument, then you will get an error. But it's not the case in JavaScript. You are passing 5 argument. Okay, I'm fine. I will just check the function name and I will call it. Okay, so you can see all the functions exist here. So that is the power of this argument object. So let's deal with this. So here console.log, this is the argument object, which argument array object which we are passing. So what we can do, let's play around with this. We can just write a for in loop for it. Okay, and we can just do a console.log of I. So it will print all the argument which you are passing while calling the function. It's like you are iterating on an array, right? So this is how you can, so these are called as a argument, and while calling we are passing the argument, but it is still going to call this hello function because hello function is the name is the priority in JavaScript, not number of the argument. Whatever the argument you are passing, I can capture that in the argument object in JavaScript, right? Okay, so this is all about the passing the arguments. In ES6 there are a lot many enhancement, that there is a default argument. So consider this function is accepting x and y. Consider this function like this, and you are passing only x. Then what will be the value of y? You can initialize the default equal to 0. So by default it will accept y as 0. Okay. Similarly, if you're not passing any of them, then you can initialize the default values of x and y, something like this. So default argument, we will talk about this in ES6. Hello and welcome everyone. So in this video we are going to talk about the functions in JavaScript. What are the different ways in which you can declare a function, function expression, function simple function, or passing functions into another functions, and what actually the syntax of the functions are. You might have seen the different variations of the function syntax. So it's something like this: simple functions, function, and say hello. This is the basic function exists in JavaScript. So if you do the type of, you will get a function. Okay, so this is the basic syntax of creating a function in JavaScript. So even if you do the console.dir to this function, what you will get? you will get a function, and this function you can see is having the prototype and the proto, two properties. So functions will have a prototype and the object of the function will have a proto property, and the function scope is defined under it. It is pointing to the global scope. Okay, so I'm talking particularly about this. This is having the prototype, and which is pointing to the constructor of the function, and the proto property which will be there with each and every object you are creating with this function, and the scope of that function which is representing the global scope. Okay, so what are the other ways in which you can create a function? So it is called a function expression, or you can call that as an anonymous function. Okay, this is the basic definition of a function. Okay, now how to call all these functions? It's simple, right? You just call this function like this, or for the first function, how you will call it? Like this. Okay, so in JavaScript, function exists in different variations, and functions are actually powerful. Function can be passed into the another function. So if you talk about the basic simple functions, then we can write some basic snippet of the code. Okay, what we can write a simple function like so I'm creating a simple function to calculate the cost of the food item. Okay, so if your account balance is only 90, right? So I can create a function so here I can write a simple function where, so if I'm eating the burger, right? So you can put a switch block or something, and you can just return the account balance minus the burger cost. Okay, so you can call these functions calculate my expense and pass the burger, and here further you can you can pass the switch block if you are eating this is the food item. Let's say here you are passing the food item, and based on the food item you can calculate your cost. So here put a switch block, so here you can put a case. If food item is the first one, then return this, and break. Similarly, you can write the code and you can return the final expenses from this. So this is how we create a function, right? So this is a function, simple function expression we have created. Similarly, we can create the function, and you can also pass function into another function. So this is very strange, right? Functions, actually JavaScript is not a pure object oriented language. It is mostly a functional programming language. Okay, so we are getting a lot of advantage of having this functional programming language where JavaScript allowing to inherit the properties from one function to another function. So JavaScript inheritance exists from the day one, like I'm talking about the ES5. Now in ES6 you might be seeing the classes, but the classes are just a syntactic sugar. They are indirectly using the function expressions only to provide the inheritance. So the important thing is we have seen the function, right? So this function is having all the arguments, methods, and name. Here you can see the prototype, right? So let's add something in the prototype of the function. So here I'm having say hello. So now again, if you do this, then in the prototype you will see the x equal to 90 has been added, right? So we are putting few things in the prototype of the function which are available to each and every object we are going to create for this function. So this is why we create a prototype first of all, because this is a single copy we are managing, and the single copy will be available to all the objects which you are going to create. You don't need to create a separate copy, like say hi, I'm adding. Okay, so I'm adding a function in the prototype, right? So I have added a function here. So you can see in the prototype now you are having two things: say hi as a function and x90 as an argument property, right? And another property is a constructor property. So now if you are going to create an object, let's do it something here. So this is your function, and now what you are doing, you are actually adding some prototype property. Similarly, you are adding functions in the prototype. This is the function you are adding. So all these things will get added in the prototype of the function. So whenever you are creating an object, because you have, what is the parent function is this. So this object 1, object 2, all will have all these prototype properties. Okay, let's do this. Okay, now I'm created 3 objects, right? Let's take a look onto the object 1. So object 1 is having say hello, and in the proto of that object you can see both the variables. Say hi is a function I created and prototype property x90, right? So what is the advantage I'm getting is, whenever you are adding the prototype property in the function, that is actually getting copied to each and every object. You don't need to manage a separate copy. So that's why we put the common things in the prototype of a function. So take a look to the examples. Object, you can see if you see the prototype of an object, you can see all the methods, common methods. Similarly, the array, all these are actually defined in the prototype of the array functions and prototype of an object function. You can see all these methods are there. These all are in the prototype. And similarly, if we do say hello dot prototype dot, we have added say hi and x property in the prototype of this function. Same type we are going to create here, like the array function, capital A array function, or capital O object function. So prototype is going to give us lot of advantage throughout the JavaScript sessions, and this is how we create it. This is how we declare the functions and we call the functions. In the future we will also talk about the self-invoking functions. Right now, if I wanted to invoke it, I will be doing something like this, right? But there exists a self-invoking function which can invoke himself. What is that? That this is something new, right? Okay, so we'll write it. This is called the ify block, immediately invoking IIFE block. Actually, this block is being self-executed. You're not passing, you're not executing anything. The argument you are passing is here. If you're passing argument, you call it like this. It's a self-invoking function. Okay, so next video we'll talk more on the objects and functions. Hello and welcome back everyone. So in this video we are going to talk about the for in loop to iterate the properties on an object. So how we create an object, we just create an object like this, and where we are specifying Okay, so this is an object. Now on the object, what you can do, you can define all these properties. Is prototype of, has on property, constructor and all, constructor to create an object, okay, of the object function. So other thing are the has on property. So what it is do, it is actually checking that this particular object has the property X or not, which is false. It is having property C, which is true. It is not having property Y, which is false. So in this we will create a function and we will try to see if that object has that property or not. So we can write a simple function. Let's write an expression. So there are different ways of writing a function. This is the function I'm writing. In this function, what I'm passing, the object and the property. Okay, and here I will be running for in loop onto that object. So this object will give me all the key value pair. So what we can do, if the key of individual object is equal to prop, in that case we can just return true, or at the end of this we can just return false. Okay, so what this is doing, it is just checking has on props that that particular object is having that property or not. And how we can call this, we can just call this is an object. Let's create object first. Let's create an object and it is just adding colon 50, and here I am passing this object and the property is X. So it is doing the same thing. It is running the for in loop on top of it, iterating each and every key, and it will keep comparing that key is equal to the property of an object you passed. If that is true, then it will return true, otherwise it will return false. Okay, so this is how we can check that particular property exists in that object or not. And actually we use the for in loop to iterate onto an object properties. So there are different methods on the object. First of all, in the object function, define properties to add a new properties, multiple property, define property to add a single properties. The entries, like if you do the entries and we created an object X, sorry, I think we created obviously somewhere past. So okay, let me create an object first. This is an object I added. Now this capital object function has all these methods. Define properties, object.create, it will create a new function. Object.assign, it is used to inherit the properties of an object into another object. Then object.entries, if you pass obj, you will get all the entries inside that function, which is an array, right? Then entries values is another function of the object, so it will give you all the values inside it. You can see there is a single value. Object.keys, values, entries. Object.assign you can do to create a new object. So this is the new object I'm creating from obj, so it will return a new object. Similarly, there are other methods which we will talk in detail. Define property, freeze, to freeze an object, which after that you cannot change anything. Get prototype of is extendable, sealed keys, length, and all these methods. Okay, so let's talk all these things in the coming videos. Hello and welcome back. So in this video, let's talk about the array of objects. So first of all, the object which we have already talked about. What are the object? You create a simpler based object like this. This is also an object. Another way of creating the object is you just define some properties under it. So like I'm putting the name property. So these are actually the dog's name I'm putting, and the type of the dog is the dog. Okay, so this is a JavaScript object I have created. Now similarly, I can create another object and put the same iteration here. Okay, now if I wanted to create the array around it, so how we can do that? Either you can just create the array like this. So what you can do, this is an array, and pass both the object, which is obj1, obj and obj1. Okay, so what it means, if you see this particular code, what it is running here, what if you do console.dir in the pets, so we actually created two array objects. So these are actually two objects which are inside an array. So we can also do we can also add more array to it. So like if I wanted to add a new index, so I can use a push method from the array, and I will just add a new object. Okay, and type can be the same. I'm just talking about basic examples. Okay, so now after doing this, what happens, we actually created an array of three objects. Now how we can access the properties? For accessing the properties, because everything is inside the pets, so you cannot access directly pets.name. You also need to provide an index, right? So if you just talk about this, I just pushed this array here. Now let me just clear this out. So it is having three array, right? So pets 0, or you can just first do a length. Here I can do, this is 0th index, so what it is giving me, the first object. So using this, I can access actually the name, I can access the type. Similarly, I can access the other index also, which is 1, right? So this is how in JavaScript we always create an array of objects, and then we access those objects, we actually iterate on those objects. So you can see I can also iterate on to this pets as an array of object, and what I will get, I can run the for in loop on this. So what you will get out of it, so if you do console.log, this object will give you the index only, but when you do, it will give you the values around it, right? You got all the three occurrence, John, John 1, John 3. So this is how we can iterate on to an array. You can also do the for of loop. If you are doing a for of loop, in that case you don't need the array object, you will get everything inside an object, because for of loop is different than the for in loop, right? So this is how we deals with the array of objects. Hello and welcome back everyone. So in this video let's talk about array, and there are a lot of methods are in the array which we can talk about, like array dot. Uh, you can see the length, concat. All these are actually methods which we use in day-to-day work in JavaScript, like sort, slice, splice, map, filter, reduce, higher order functions, index of, key values, entries. All these are the methods inside an array. Okay, so first of all, like a simple iteration of the array, like I'm creating array something like this. Okay, now if I need to iterate, I can just use a simple for loop, and here I can do array dot length. Okay, and I plus plus, it's same as any other loop we are creating, and here get a particular index. So how can I do that? Array dot I. So it will give you the value at that particular index. So here what I'm doing, I'm iterating till the length of the array and getting each and every values from that array. This is the basic iteration, and we have seen that with the help of for in and for of loop also. These are also the alternatives you can use. You can also use, let's talk about all these methods. Array dot ForEach is there. What it do, it will take a function as an argument. Like function item I. Let me write this code here only so it will be more clear. Array dot ForEach. So here you will get iteration onto that. I. So this is how you can use the ForEach method. So array.prototype has this ForEach method which will iterate on individual item in the array and will print all the values. So you can see all the values are coming. Similarly, you can use the map method, or similarly there are the methods like filter. I will talk about in depth what all different methods are these, what are the differences, and where should you use a map, where should you use filter, where should you use for each method. But for now let's understand that this is how we do the iteration on an array. So here you can just replace it with the map, here you can replace it with the filter. Here this is how you can do the filter, and here you can return if I is greater than 0, right? So filter is used for the filtering onto the collection, so it will return only those elements which are greater than 0, and it will always creates a new array. It also creates a new array, so it is not going to change your existing array. These are actually immutable array prototype methods, and for each is just for the iteration purpose we use. It doesn't change anything onto the existing array. So when you see filter here, if I do if I is greater than 3, so it will return this new array. Your array is still the same. It is still having all the elements, so it is going to create a new method, new array. Similarly, there is a map method. It is going to create a new array. You can also do some iteration onto that. So map method is used when you wanted to copy an object and wanted to do some calculation. Filter is method is used to create a new array based on some filter criteria. Okay, these are the important methods. Similarly, if we have used it, there is a short method also there. So what sort will do, it do the default sorting of the elements. So sort method also takes a function as an argument, and it takes two arguments, a and b, the element for comparison, and it returns. So we will talk about the sort method, how it works. It is something like either we can just directly call the sort method like this. So it will sort the elements, but array sorting doesn't work because it is based on the Unicode character, and it doesn't work when the digits are two characters, two digits. So in that case, you need to write the prototype method, the function, or the function inside it, and your sorting should be based on who is greater than. Like if a is greater than b, then it will be a ascending order sorting. So you can write your custom function and it can do the sorting based on that. Okay, so these are actually, there are many more. We will talk about these one by one, what all different ways to. So JavaScript is all about manipulation of data. Some are mutable collections, some are immutable methods. It's just about the uses. When should we use what? The slice, ForEach, map, reduce, filter. We'll talk about them one by one. Hello and welcome back everyone. And in this video we are actually going to talk some generic stuff. And I mean, whatever I'm teaching, I'm not teaching based on some agenda that these are the topics I need to cover. I'm talking about the basic things which people are not even aware whenever they also got an experience in JavaScript. So let's talk about the first class functions in JavaScript. So in JavaScript, everything is a function, first of all. Okay, you might heard about the object. You might heard about the array, right? Array, object, all these are actually the first class functions. If you do the type of array, all are functions. And whenever we say that we are creating new object, so we are actually creating the object of this function using the new keyword. Whenever you say you are creating the new array, then you are actually creating the object of this particular function. And how we create an object of the function? Simply like this. This is the function. How can I create an object of this function? By using the new keyword. Okay, this object is actually created from the constructor function of this function. So if you do, this is an object, right? Now if you see the Proto, Proto is actually the constructor of this Proto is actually pointing to the function x, right? So this object, so constructor of a function, constructor of an object always points to the function who created it. So x is the function who created the object, right? So the proto of an object, the constructor proto of an object will also always point to the function. Okay. So in JavaScript, this is a super function object. And in the object you will see a lot of different methods. Object.assign, create, define properties, entries, freeze, get property names, frozen, sealed, all these methods. These are actually the capital O object functions, because we generally create a object like this also, but it's not that object. I'm talking about capital O object function. Okay. So we are able to create an object like array object. How will I create? Either I can create it like this, or I can create it like this. In both the cases, the constructor of this object will point to the array function. Let's talk about the array object. Okay. console.dir to look into this object. This is the object, right? So if you see, the proto is actually pointing, its constructor is pointing to the array function, right? Because it's indirect, it's another way of creating an object of an array like this. And if I do array object, then you can see the constructor of this array object is pointing to the array function. Okay. So in JavaScript, these are actually the misconception which people always have. Everything is a function in JavaScript. Even you talk about the array, string, object, or whatever you talk about, like, okay, maybe like this, object equal to. So how I'm creating this object? Which particular function the proto of this object is pointing to? Let's see that. If I do object, and you see the proto of this pointing to the capital O object function, right? So I'm declaring object like this. So there are different ways of creating the object. This is one of them. Or you can create an object using capital O object dot create, or you can create an object using by new constructor, right? New function name. Some function is there, new hello, new student. This is how we create it, right? So whenever I do console.dir of any of the object, so consider if I'm doing console.dir of this particular object, I'm removing them for now. So in that case, the proto, so if I do console.dir object, so this object, proto has a constructor property. So its proto has a constructor which is pointing to the function capital O object. Okay. So everything is coming out of the functions. You are creating an object, and then that object proto again pointing to that function. So in JavaScript, there are two things only which I see is function hello. Everything is a function, and how we are creating an object. Okay. Now this hello can be a capital O object, it can be a capital O object, it can be a capital O array, or any function. Okay. So whenever we do the capital O object dot create, assign, all these methods are there. Similarly, there is an array, similarly there is a string, or similarly everything is something like this. And whenever you extract out an individual function, you will see all these definitions. Let's talk about functions for a minute. Function hello. So this is the function I created. Let's do console.dir, and you will try to look into this function what it is having. So this is the function hello, right? Now you can create the object of this function using the prototype, right? So in the prototype, the constructor will point to the function, and using the proto, it will point, it is the proto of this particular function, it is pointing to the capital O object. Okay. So every function is actually inheriting this capital O object function. You see this, these are actually little advanced things, but don't worry about it. I'm just talking about basic array, basic object and basic functions in JavaScript. So I did console.dir hello. It's just having two properties, right? Prototype, you can see in the prototype, the constructor of this function prototype is actually pointing to the function, and the proto property is pointing to the object class, object function. You can see here the constructor is pointing to the object function. Okay, leave out it. You will be able to understand this, I think, the end of the course. I'm just skipping this part for now. Maybe I'm introducing at the wrong time. So we are clear on to the object part and on to the function part. So everything is a function. We are just creating the object of them in just a different ways and in the different semantics. Okay. In the next video, we will talk more around the array methods, array prototype methods. First, we will try to understand what is a prototype. Then we will try to understand all the prototype methods and creating the object of the function. Hello and welcome everyone. So in this video, let's talk about the for in loop and the for of loop on an array. We have already talked about how to create an array. Is just create a number array. Okay. So for in loop and for of loop are used for iterating or putting the iteration on an array. Something like this. And here you can just do a console.log. Okay, so what it will give you the values of I. So for of loop is a star. We will take a look onto the for of loop in depth later. It actually iterate onto the iterable object which are generated using some generators. But array is also iterable object, so you can iterate onto that array using for of loop. And here I will represent the element, and this loop will run until unless I becomes undefined. So the for of loop you can put on iterable objects like an array, so you will get all the values inside an array. Similarly, there is another thing is the for in loop. Here let's talk about that. So here for array 1, this is another array. Okay, and what I'm doing, I will be writing for in loop for it. So what it will do, it will be doing some kind of iteration. Let's see what output we will get. So for of loop is different from for in loop. So for in loop is actually to iterate the keys on an array or any object. So you see the values are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So those are not the values of an array. Those are actually the index. Now let's try to do one thing here. Let's try to do console.log array1. What you will get an array, right? So array is also the key value kind of thing, where the key is 0 and value is 3. So for in loop is actually used to iterate on to an object, and this index will represent a key. You see, I do the for in loop onto this array, and it is giving me all the index of that array. So array, if you see the array is an object, right? And in that object, what you are having onto the 0th index, the key is 0, value is 3, key is 1, value is 3. Similarly, so for in loop is actually helping us to iterate onto the object. It can also be, object can be an array. In that case of an array, the keys will be the index of each and every element, right? So all these prototype methods are here. But for in loop is more useful whenever you are actually doing the iteration on a particular object instead of an array. How to create an object in the same way, and here you put some key value pair where x is 60 and let me add another property, y is 80. Okay, here in this case you can iterate on to this particular object using for of loop. You just replace it with the object. You will get x and y. So what are the x and y? X and y are the keys. Okay, if you wanted to get the exact value, then what you can do, the object of I. So it will give you the value, right? So here object, you are trying to get the value from that object like an array, right? So object array is also being represented by an object, and object, the values from the object can be extracted like an array. So we have seen that console.log array. Sorry for that. So it is actually the keys and values, right? And even in the object, like we are declaring some object, something like that. So if you do object, and here if you do 0, object x, so what it will do, it is actually trying to get the value x 60, right? In this case, it's not an index, it's just a value placed at the index x, right? So this is actually representing the index. It can be anything. It is not necessary that it is going to be a number for us. So this is actually the variation between object and array. Here if you do the object y, you will get the next value. And if you try to print the value, it is not there. It's not there, right? So this is all about the for in and for of loop, which are the important aspect. And for in loop is usually used with the objects because we need to get the values and key value pairs in the object. So similarly, there are other methods like object.keys, object.values, and object.entries. We will talk about them in the later sections. But for in loop is mostly used for object, and for of loop you can use for any iterable objects like an array or collection of items.
Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel, and here I'm covering the basic, intermediate and advanced JavaScript. Let's go forward to the next video, and in this video we are going to talk about objects. Capital O object function. Right, if you do a type of, what it is a function, correct? So we will see the basic part of the function in the basic JavaScript training. Then we will cover a few things in the advanced. If you just see the capital O object, then you will get this is a function, right? If you do a type of, then also you will get a function. Okay, so let's talk about the basics of the function, how we create a function, and how we are getting it. So how we can get a function? So let's obj, and let's call this object function. What it is going to give you, let's try to do console.dir onto this object which we got from calling the object. I did something wrong. Yeah, so we are actually getting the object of a JavaScript function from here. Right, so it's an empty object having only Proto, and the constructor of this object is pointing to the function object, right? You can see it. Now, what are the different ways of creating the object? So whatever we did here, if you do the type of object, it is an object, right? Because we got it from the object function, right? So let's for a equal to and pass the null. So what will happen in this case? We are passing null to the object function to create an object. And what a is again an object with a null property, right? Similarly, you can create an object with undefined. For
simple string argument like. So what you are creating a string argument. Let's do console.dir a. So you are creating a string object which is having all these key value pairs. So it has converted this hello string into the string key value pairs, and the length of this object is 5 string object, right? So this is how we can play around with the object. uh, Similarly, we can pass the array of values. So what will happen in this case, it will create an array of 3 parameters. So whatever the output depends on what you are passing. So object function is a native function. When you are passing string, then it is giving you the string object. When you are passing array, then it is giving you the array object, right? So similar example, like we can pass some object here. So in this case, it is returning object with the value of x50, right? It has inherited that all these properties. Now let's take a look onto the object function prototype methods which are inbuilt. Dot. So you can see we have the constructor function, has on property, property enumerable. All these methods are there in the object prototype. Similarly, proto, define getter, define setter, all these, right? So has on property you can use to check if this particular object is having that property or not. It's a property name, right? So it's a false. Similarly, if you are passing something else, then it will also again will be false, right? So now let's take a look on how we are creating the object in JavaScript generally, because we are not using object function to create an object, right? We are using simple, plain and simple code like something like this to create an object. Now, if you do type of x, which is an object, and console.dir x, what you will get? It's an object, and its proto is pointing to the object function, right? So we did in the same way. It's pointing to the object function because this is another way of creating the object. Now let's do one more thing. Instead of this, call the object function, right? And x, so it is again doing the same thing. Constructor is pointing to the object function. Now on the same, let's do the new object. You have seen the syntax, right? Var x equal to new object. Now what it is pointing? It is again an object, and its proto is pointing to the function object, and it is having all these methods, right? So this time you actually called the new object, new keyword, I mean the constructor function of the object, and you have created an empty object. So either you create the object like this, either you create the object like this, both, all of them are the same object is being created by all of them. So if we do the comparison, so let's call it as a, okay, let's call it as a b, okay, and with the new object we have done, let's call it as a c. So we have created a 3 object, right? So a dot proto, so we can compare if the protos are equal, that means they are pointing to the same object. That is true. That is amazing, right? That is also true. See with the b proto, that will also be a true. So all are representing to the same object, right? So there are 3 different ways of creating an object which we have seen. Var a equal to, this is an empty object, okay, sorry for that. Then we can create an object like using the new keyword. or same you can create using by calling the object function, right? All are just the permutations of creating the object. There will be one more which you have heard of. Object.create is explicit method in the object function which you can use. Okay, so that's it about the objects. In the next video we'll talk a little more about the objects. Hello and welcome back everyone. So let's talk about more on the object. So you can see object dot, what all different methods we have in an object, right? We have assign, we have create. These are not the prototype methods, right? In the function prototype you will see only these object is property of, local string has on property, but on the proto you will see all these methods, length, color, apply, okay, and directly all these methods exist. Okay, so this is the object function which exists, which is a core of JavaScript. It's a native. So how you can use all these methods, we will talk one by one. So first let's talk about object.create. And let's talk about object.assign. Okay, so object.create, what it do? It accepts one argument, an empty object. So what it do? It creates the new object for us, a brand new object with the help of object.create. Or like if you already have one object which is having few properties x70 and you wanted to create a copy of it and pass x, it will give you the new object, right? So let's try to, right, sorry for that. So I'm creating the view object from object.create. So first let's talk about the object.create. X is x70. Okay, now we are creating the y using object.create, and I'm passing x. So what will happen in this case? So I'm trying to create a new object, and if you do console.dir and if you try to print b, what you will get? It's an empty proto, right? But the proto is again having the x70, right? So this is a kind of inheritance we have done in the object. X is having x70. We created the b object by extending the property of x. So now you can access that value, right? This is not magic. All the properties of x are inherited into the new object which we created as a b, and now you can do a b.x which will give you the 70, right? Again the prototype of this is pointing to the function object because we did the reverse chaining. B proto is pointing to the proto of x proto is pointing to constructor function, right? So similarly you can create a chain reaction kind of. So here you create a C and object.create B, and if you do console.dir C, it doesn't have anything, but its proto is again having x70, right? Its proto is pointing to the object B, B's proto is pointing to the object X, and X proto is pointing to the capital O object. This is called the proto chaining in the objects. Whenever you are creating one object from another, its proto is copied to the another object. Okay, so object.create is used kind of inheritance in the application for the objects. So you can see object.create method. It's a native code. Can I talk more about this? So just pass your argument, it will give you the new object. Okay, so you can pass the object directly also here, and the new object's proto will have a 60 and its proto will have an object. Okay, this is about the object.create. In the next video, we will talk about more methods on the object function. Hi everyone, welcome back. So let's talk about another part on the object. So we create an object something like this, right? Every time we put the curly braces and do this. So how it is different from what we are doing with the help of object.create? How it is different from this particular piece, or both are the same, which we already know that both are same. Either you write it like this, either you just call the object function, or you either use the new keyword. But how they are same, right? So if you talk about, oh, this is I'm creating an object and this is equivalent to this. So I hope you are aware about how what the prototype is pointing to. If this is the hello function I'm creating, so if I do console.dir hello.prototype, it represents the object of the hello function, right? Which is having the proto, and proto, the constructor of the proto is pointing to the function object. This is the basic definition of the prototype of a function. It represents an object, right? So similarly, either you write the code something like this, empty curly braces, or you can write using object.create and pass the empty object from the object function. Right? Both definition look like same. Here also we are creating an object, here also we are creating the object, and here object.create is accepting another object, right? This is the argument it accepts the object proto and proto properties, right? This is what it looks for. So this is giving us the proto object.prototype. Similarly, if I create an object, another object from this hello function, how will I do that? So consider there is a constructor function. Okay, I will be creating a new object from here. One way to create an object from this function is using the new keyword. This is how I will create an object, right? Other way I can do that is just using the object.create, and I will pass the prototype of this function. This is another way of creating the object, and both are representing the same thing. Either you create the object like this, or either you create the object like this. Object.create, it accepting the object and it is giving you the new object. It also doing the same thing. It is actually creating the new object for this particular constructor function. This is how we create an object using constructor function, right? So constructor here is the name of that function. It can be anything. But what actually happens in object.create? If I ask you to write a method to implement whatever happening in object.create, can you write a vanilla code for it? Object create, and what we are going to accept in argument, we are going to accept a proto. Let's keep it simple for now. So we are accepting the proto in the function argument. Okay, we can write it in the better way. This is the function and it is accepting proto as an argument. Now what I will do, I will create a new function, right? And in the prototype of the function f, I will assign this proto. F.prototype, this is the function I have, and I will assign the proto which I received in the argument, and I will just return the new object of this function. So these lines of code is actually doing the same thing whatever we are doing here. So object.create is a function we created. We are creating the new function and assigning the proto to the prototype of that function. Okay, you already know the prototype of a function represents an object, right? Now we are returning the object of that function. So whatever you are passing in the proto, it will create a new object based on that. Okay, so this code can be used as a polyfill. Whenever you don't have that facility, you can use this to create a polyfill. But these are the important things. Both are equivalent. Why? Because it is accepting the object.prototype, and you already know that if you write this function object is already defined. So why I'm writing, so function.prototype, right? It is the proto object which is this. So it is accepting the prototype, and in the prototype you have all these properties, and we are creating the function based on that, right? Similarly here, object.create constructor function we created, and then creating the another object. See both the things. This O equal to new constructor is equivalent to this function, right? Because it's the same. Object.create is accepting the prototype of that function and then creating an object. Okay, that's it guys. I think we should move to the next methods of object function. We will talk about this in depth again when we are going to talk about the prototype of a function. In an object we are just dealing with the proto, but when we talk about the functions we will deal with the prototype, and then we will do a more hands-on on this. Welcome back everyone. So we were talking about object.create. Let's take a last video on this because it's an important concept which I missed. So object.create, we didn't talk about the second argument in the object.create. First argument, we know that we need to pass the prototype object or a plain object, or the second object is a properties object. If you want to add some new property in the newly created object, then mention it here. Okay, we'll talk about that with this example. So consider this is a prototype object we have. Something wrong here. Prototype object, and I have a full name property. Okay, it's not function. My bad. Some keyboard issues. Okay, so I have created a prototype object. Now I can do simply object.create on this to create a new object out of it, and because it's a plain object, so I can directly pass it, and I'm creating the new object which is a person. Okay, so new person object has been created and it has the full name property. So if you try to do person dot full name, what you will get? It's a function, right? So you need to call it. You will get NN, right? This first name is not a property, last name is not a property, both are undefined. Undefined plus undefined, not an N, right? Not a number, because we are trying to add something. So it can add either they are, both should be string. So we can extend this object. If you try to see this console.dir and the person object, it is having nothing. It's a plain object. In the proto you have some full name function, right? Now we can also add some properties, something like this, first name and the last name property. So what it will do, it will add the two property in the person object, the local properties, not in the proto. So okay, I did only for the first name. Let's do for the last name also. First name and last name, two properties I have added, right? So let me just clear it out. Now person object is having both the properties. Now if you call person.fullname, then you will get the proper response, right? So how this happened, right? So what actually happened when you are actually calling these particular functions, all those things we will try to see. Okay, let's try to print this. Okay, right? So person object, if you try to let's put this console.log inside this because it will not get printed. I have already created a person object, so let me iterate this once more. What is wrong now? Function object console.log this. Okay, this dot first name. So I wanted to show you what the current this object is pointing to. So this is an object, right? So this object will not be pointing to the global reference. It will be pointing to the local, where it will be having three properties: first name, last name, and full name properties. So where this dot first name is coming from, when you are assigning the value to the person object. So this is the person object we created, and we have this full name function. Okay, now let me just create a directly an object. Now if I'm calling person.fullname, right, it is giving me the empty object and it is having the full name as a property, right? But let me add the properties, first name and the last name property to the first person object. Now if you see full name, okay, right, this object is currently pointing to this reference. It is having first name and last name is Tarun, TKS and Sarma, right? So that's why you're able to get this first name and last name as a property. But this is we creating the object and then we are assigning some properties to it. That's not the right way, right? We have the other option, right? We can also assign new properties to the newly created object. So like we are creating the object something like this. So instead of doing this, I have a less space here. Let's do it right away. So prototype object, and here you can create an object properties. And how to do that? So first property I'm adding is a first name. Okay, first name property will have another three properties, which is a value. Okay, so every object property will have these three properties: writable, configurable, and the value. We will talk about that, all these parameters in depth when we talk more about object in the intermediate part. So these three properties are added, like there is a writable, configurable, enumerable. There are three properties. So this is the first name property. Similarly, I can add another property here, which is a last name, right? So this is how you can create a properties also while creating the new object. So now you don't need to assign these parameters manually. This newly created object already have the first name and last name. So you can just directly call the first name dot full name and it will give you that value, right? Even if you try to do the console.log person, you will have everything. It will have the both the parameters, both the properties, first name and last name, which is writable, enumerable as true, right? So this is the another way of creating the object where you can extend, where you can create a new properties. So enumerable, configurable, writable, these three are the properties of a descriptor. So whenever we create an object, we assign some properties, right? So let me try to, Okay, let me create an object which is having x60, right? Now, so this is a method inside the get on descriptor. Here I can get the descriptor value of the object. Inside this object I have the one, this is very, so inside the object I can get the descriptor of this property, which is value 60, writable, enumerable, and configurable, right? So either you can create these properties by default, or by default they will get assigned to true. Okay, so in object there is a method define property. So if I wanted to define a new property on this object which is already having x60, I can do something like this. So this is the object, and here I can add some new properties. Define properties means you can add one more property with the value all these things. So I'm adding new property y having value 70. Leave it a second, object dot define property, and okay, let me just define more properties here. So I'm adding a new property y, and value is 60. Writable is false. Okay, let me check. Property description must be an object. That is fine. So this is how we are creating an object. And this is the description of the object define property. I'm adding a new property to this object y. Maybe I'm doing something wrong here. Okay, let me do some object dot define property. So object dot define property takes two arguments. First is the object on which you are creating the new object, new property. So object name and the property which you are adding, and the values around it. Object dot define property y is the new property I'm adding, and okay, I'm forgetting the quotes here. What is this? Oh, what I'm doing. Sorry guys, I mean this is a difference between define property and define properties. So the object, the new property, and the values of the object, right? So this will work. Now we have two properties in the object, x60 and y70. Similarly, there is another method, define properties instead of define property. This is how you can add. So you can also add writable, configurable, enumerable, true, false properties to the new property which you are adding to the object. Hi and welcome everyone. In this video we are going to talk about object.assign, which is another important method of the object function. And what I do, it actually gives you the target object from the source object. So there is a scenario where you wanted to copy one object into another object, then this is the best way of doing it. What we need to do, object.assign, this is the target object and this is the source object you have. So it will give you the target new deep copy of that object. Okay, so consider there is an object x which is having property a70, b90. Now you wanted to create another object from this, right, a new object. Then what you can do, you can just pass x, so it will give you the new copy which is isolated from the original copy of x. Okay, so let's do this something like this. X is the object and I wanted to create the y as an object, object.assign x. Okay, so let's do y dot c equal to 90, or let's put it as 60. Okay, so x, the value of x is still having a and b, but y is now having a, b, c, right? Because it's a deep copy, it's not changing. Whatever is happening on y object is not hampering anything on x object, right? It's a deep copy. Object dot assign, this is the target object, this is source object, and you are getting the new object out of it. So the y memory reference is totally different from x. In y you added a c property, okay, that is now not available on x, or whatever you add x on x, that will be not be available on to the y. Okay, a, b, c, you added a d, so y is having all these and x will be having d property, right? So this is the difference we added, right? So object dot assign is actually used to do the deep copy, or you can also say it is used to merge the properties. Consider that I have a tan b40. It can have a number of arguments, right? So what it will give me, it will merge that and it will give me the new object. So how the object dot assign works, it try to copy or override the properties from the right to left. C70 will override B40, okay, both are different, so it will merge. Then B40, C70 will override A10, all are different, so it will merge. Otherwise, if you see, if I pass something like this, can you define what will be the output, right? It will A70 override A40, both are the same properties. Now A70 again will override the A10 property, so you are getting A70 property. Okay, the thing is, okay, I'm able to do the deep copy of an object using object dot assign, object dot create, or there are other ways. When I say deep copy means, let's you are having this object A70, right? Now you are assigning y equal to x, and what you are doing, y dot a is 80, right? X is also now 80, right? You changed y, that totally impacted x, so it's a shallow copy. It's both are sharing the reference. But when you did using object dot assign, it will change everything. You just pass your x object and assign it to the y object, right? Now y dot 60, so your x is still unimpacted, right? Okay, the thing is we did it in the wrong way. X is already having a80, we created a y, and now I added a property y at 60, right? Maybe the duplicate declaration. So okay, I didn't do a deep copy here. So to do a deep copy, this is the target object I am creating from x. Okay, now if I add something to the y, that is not available to x. So keep that in mind. I'm creating a deep copy, I'm creating a new object from x. If you just pass a single argument, it means it's same, it is sharing the reference. So let's try to repeat that so you are clear on this. Okay, so this is x, and consider x is having only a is 20, and you creating the y object from it. Now if you do y dot b equal to 80, then x is also impacted, right? So if you do the how to confirm it, x dot underscore Proto, right? Okay, let's do the comparison of I am assigning. I think I have spoiled the answer. It's true, right? So whatever you have on the x, both are pointing to the same memory reference until unless you didn't pass the deep copy object like this. You need to create a new object out of it, then x. So it will create a y as a separate copy. Okay. This is the drama of object.assign, but there is a particular case. Right now, whenever we create an object, all the properties are enumerable, configurable, writable, all are by default false. Let's check that out. Okay, sorry for that, I'm doing too much for x. Okay, let's put a 70 and object dot get on property descriptor, and I will be passing x object, and there is a property a. Okay, you can see all the configurable, writable, enumerable all are true. But what if I create a new property on the object and put the configurable, enumerable as a false? You can see object dot create. This is my object. Let's put okay, foo is fine. It is an object which is having foo1, and it is creating bar and baz as a new values having value equal to true. So at this time it is non-enumerable property will be false. Let's see that. So object dot get on property descriptor, and I'm passing object here, and I wanted to get the property descriptor of bar. You can see the writable is false, enumerable is false, configurable is false. So we need to talk about this enumerable property. If enumerable property is false, then it will not get copied into the new object we are creating. So this is the same example, same sample I'm talking about. So enumerable is false, here enumerable is true. So whenever you are creating the new deep copy object, so this is the deep copy I'm doing, creating copy of this object. I'm doing a deep copy. So this deep copy will have baz only available, not bar. But if I say enumerable true here also, okay, let's add this property true in both. Now both are enumerable, so you can see both the properties are there. So a lot of people misunderstood this concept that object.assign will create a whole new copy, but it depends on the property of that object. If all are enumerable as a true, then all will get copied, but you can do some customization. You can put the enumerable false for some object properties that will not get copied to the new object. Okay, this is all about object.assign, which is used for merging the objects, which is used for creating the deep copy, or which is used to put some restriction also while doing copying. Hello and welcome everyone. In this video we are going to talk about the object proto and the function prototype. So we create a function something like this, right? And whenever we need to create an object, either we just create using constructor function, so this is how we are creating the object of the function. Otherwise we can create the object using object literal, or create an object using the new object, because object is also a function. And so let's talk about what is this proto property and what is this prototype. Function has a prototype and object has this proto property, how they are linked with each other. Okay, so consider we have the object function. Object function we already talked about. So the prototype of the object function is represented by the constructor function, right? You can see here. Now if you talk about the constructor here, that is pointing to the object of the object function, right? I'm talking about capital O object, object.prototype, which is a function. So object.prototype has a lot of things. You can see it has all these methods. Now if I consider particularly about a constructor, what is this constructor? This is the same constructor which we are using while creating something like this. So it is the same thing. It is creating us the object, right? So this is constructor is representing the object of the function. Now let's create a function hello. Here what this object is representing, let's take a look. Obj, this is the object created by constructor function of that function hello. So the proto, this is an object, right? Hello is an object. Sorry, hello is okay, object. I print the object, right? So this is the object of the hello function. Okay, and the proto has these two properties, constructor and the proto. So the constructor of this object is pointing to the hello function, and again further the proto will point to the capital O object, because capital O object is the parent of everything. So dot proto, it will finally point to the capital O object. So here if you see what I'm doing here, object dot proto, so it is giving me the constructor function, right? Now again if I do proto, it will give me the parent object function. If you talk about parent object function, right? So the first time when I did a proto, it has given me the parent function, which is a hello function, right? If I do again the underscore proto, it is giving me the capital O object. Okay, so this is the proto chain I am running. Similarly, if you talk about hello dot prototype, it is giving me the constructor function, hello function. I again call the prototype on this. So this prototype is giving me the constructor function, right? We can so this is this function. This function again have the proto and constructor. So let's talk about constructor. Right now this constructor function is representing the object, right? So let's talk about this chain in the diagram. Okay, so either you do something like this, or you create. So now if you talk about console.dir, or where is the y proto is pointing? Underscore proto, it is pointing to the object, right? The parent or object function. Similarly, whenever you create the object of a function like hello function we had, right? This object proto will point to the prototype of this hello function. Then again, whenever you do further proto, it is pointing to the object function. Okay, this can be well understood by this diagram. This diagram explains everything. So here we will talk about the chaining. Okay, so consider I have a capital O object function. So this is the object prototype, and the constructor of the object prototype is representing the function. This is always true, right? Whenever we do the object dot prototype, we get object prototype, and whenever we do the dot constructor, it gives us the object function. Okay, now this is the object function. It actually, whenever you do the object function underscore proto, it is going to give you the prototype of the capital F function. Okay, so let's do this. First, let's understand this example. I will talk about the third case. So this is the foo is a function. I created f1 and f2. These are the function object, constructor function object of f1 f2. Whenever you do the f1 underscore proto, it will take you to the prototype of that function dot prototype. Again, when you do the underscore proto, it will take you to the capital O object prototype, whose proto is going to be null. So every proto chain recursively trace back until the proto becomes null. Proto is pointing to the function prototype, again proto is pointing to the object prototype, proto is pointing to the null. Okay, so here same we are doing with the object. So we created two object from the object function. So these are the two constructor object. This proto is directly pointing to the object prototype, and you do again proto, it will take you to the null, right? because you directly created the object directly from the capital or object function instead of foo function. If we talk about this, capital O object, right? So this X is representing an object, right? And the proto of this object will represent the prototype of the object function. Okay, now if you just talk about the proto, it is representing the prototype of capital O object function. Again, you do underscore underscore proto, it will give you null, right? Because you have reached to the last point. Okay, similarly we created the hello function object. This is the hello function, and if you do object dot this is the object, right? So I can do a proto on this. So first it will point to the hello function prototype, right? Now again, if you do the underscore underscore proto, it will represent object function prototype, and whenever you do again underscore underscore proto, it will take you to the null. This is how the things works in JavaScript. Okay, so the proto is pointing to the prototype of the function, and if you keep doing a proto, it will take you to the object capital or object functions proto, and it will be a null finally. Okay, so these two cases are clear. Either we create a object or a function using new keyword, or either we create an object of capital or object function using new keyword. Its proto will point to the object, its proto will point to first function prototype, then it will again point to the object prototype. Now there is a capital F function also that we haven't explored yet. So this is already there, and you can do a type of, it's a function, right? So you can create the new object from this also. So if you do X, it is an object, it's a anonymous function, you can see. So it's not an object, it is an anonymous function is being represented, right? So if you do console.dir and try to get what is this X, X is anonymous function whose prototype is represented by anonymous function, or proto is presented by the capital object. That is the only difference. So function proto, this function proto will point to the function prototype, and its proto will point to the object prototype, and its proto again point to the null. It's very important. So when you do object function proto, it points to the capital F function prototype. Okay, so we will talk about this in the details when we talk about the prototype in depth. Till now we have covered only about the proto in the objects. Okay, this is all about this video. Next we will talk about the scope and little more things which are left in the basics, then we will start intermediate. Hello and welcome everyone. So in this video we are going to talk about call by value and reference. So this is actually generic feature exists in each and every programming language, that how the reference is shared or how the values are shared in the functions. So this is my function where I'm having two arguments, var1 and var2, and same are declared outside the function, and I'm calling this function from here, call by value. Okay, so I'm passing call var1 and var2, right? And what is happening that I am assigning some values to the var1 and var2 inside this function. So the question is this going to impact the values which are declared outside the function? Outside the function these are 10, 10 and 20. Inside the function you assigned 100 and 200. Is it going to change the value whatever is inside the outside function? So this is the call by value. It's not going to impact anything which is defined outside. Okay, these are not references, these are just simple values, arguments var1 and var2. You passed you assign those values to the different one, but the scope is limited to this function. So whatever is declared outside will be globally available, and you can see that are not changed. Okay, so it is a simple example of how this is working. Here these are 10 and 20, so you will get a 10 and 20 value here. Okay, second thing is okay, I'm using let keyword, so it is not allowing me to reassign this again. Okay, second thing is a call by reference. So call by reference means while calling to the function you are going to pass a reference, and whatever you are changing in that object, that will also get impacted, that will also impact the outside object. Okay, so here is the outside object, and I'm passing the same object here, and I'm changing the value a to 100. So obviously the whatever the value which is declared outside will also get impacted by this. So you can see earlier it was a1, then you call the functions, you made a equal a property with 100, and after calling this function I'm trying to get the global value, it is also saying the same a100, right? So this is the call by reference, and in the call by reference you are passing the same object, and this object, this reference is being passed. Now you can add a multiple properties to the reference, those all will be available. Think like you are adding the b property with the 200 value, and then again you are trying to do the console. So var b will have two properties. Okay, I cannot declare it again with the same. Because I used the let keyword instead of var, and in the let keyword you cannot reassign the same thing. Okay, everywhere I have changed it. Yeah, you can see while calling the I'm assigning two values, and outside the function also those values are reflected, and you can get you are seeing the two properties there. So this is all about call by values and call by reference. Wherever we pass the object in the function, it is the call by reference only, but whenever we pass the primitive values, it is a call by value. Hi everyone, welcome back. So here we are going to talk about another important point, which is the deep copy and shallow copy. Okay, so we already seen that whenever I'm assigning some object like this, where I have a property a equal to 70, and then what I'm doing y equal to x, and what if I'm changing something in y dot b equal to 80, then my x is also getting impacted, right? So this is because I'm doing a shallow copy, and the reference are shared. When you do this assignment, the reference of x object is shared with the y, so whatever you change in the y is also changing in x. Okay, because both are pointing to the same memory. But how can we avoid this? We can avoid this with this json.stringify. So what this json.stringify will do, it will convert first object into the string, then again it will parse it. So it is actually trying to do the delink of the object. I mean, it has removed the link of that object from the previous object. So you can see new object.c is 90, then x is not impacted, right? X is still having 70 and 50, right? Because it is stringifying it and then parsing it back. That is the right way of doing it. And we have already talked about object.assign. That object.assign is not going to do the shallow copy, it is doing a deep copy. So whatever is there in the x will be copied to the new object, and whenever you are adding something to this new object that is not impacting the x object, it's a deep copy because I'm creating the new object from object.assign. Similarly, you can also write your own code. What the code is, clone object. Okay, so what this object is doing, what this function is doing, clone object, and this function is just taking function object as an argument, and we are iterating onto that object. We are using for in loop to look into each and every property. Then we are checking if this object is a nested object or not. If it is not a nested object, assign that property to the clone object. Otherwise, if the property in the object is representing a nested object, then it's a recursive call. So you call the clone object again by passing that property, right? So we can also use a clone object x here, and I mean, we can assign this to something. So this is the new object I created, right? So Z is having both the properties, and now if you are adding some new property to it, it's not impacting X, right? So this is also a deep copy of example. Okay, now we can talk about the other methods which are actually doing a deep copy, like concat.splice. Splice 0 will give you the separate copy. So if you wanted to do a method call with the pass by value, then create a copy, deep copy of an object, of an array, or of a collection, then only pass it to the function. So whatever the function is going to do with that object will not be impacting anything else. So here, this is how we create a deep copy of an array, concat slice, or we also use, like, there is an array, something like this, and whenever we do a dot map and write a callback function inside it, it is always going to give us the new array without changing the existing array. So that is the beauty of the map filter method. What is missing here? Okay, you got the new copy of array. Similarly, there is a method filter. You can also provide some criteria. So I is greater than, let's consider it as a 5. Okay, so it will give you the new array without changing the existing array. If you can see, the existing array is still the same. Okay, so slice, concat, map, filter, all these are actually immutable, showing immutable behavior. They are not changing the existing array. They always giving us the new array. So it's a deep copy. Whatever we are changing in the different array will not impact the existing array. Okay, this is all about the deep copy and shallow copy, and I already talked about the enumerable property. If you are using object.assign, if the property is enumerable is false, then you cannot copy it into the new object. Then you need to use this way of clone object method. It will manually doing a copy of each and every property into another object, or you can use this method. Okay, thanks everyone. Hello and welcome back everyone. So in this video we are going to talk about the curry function and closures also. So first let's talk about the closures, and I will be talking about one of the basic example which everybody talks about. Okay, so here I have a function b, function add1, and it is taking b as an argument. And what it is doing, okay, now what I'm returning from this function is function b. This is what I'm returning, right? This is the very basic example, and this will explain everything about the closures. Okay, so let's talk about calling add1 method by passing 2. Okay, now let's do console.dir on to x, because x is representing another function, because add function is returning another function and doing the calculation a plus b. So while calling add, what we will get another function, and if you see, there are 3 scope in that function. First is a global scope. Okay, so in this closure scope you can see a2 is stored. So what is the closure? First of all, a closure is a persistence mechanism in JavaScript using which the inner functions can access the values which are available in the outer function. And here in this case, the outer function has already returned the value 2, right? The outer function has already returned, but the value of the parameter is still there in the closure of the inner function. So inner function is keeping the value 2 inside the closure of the inner function because it is accessible. This add1 function can access the value is defined in the immediate scope, right? Because you are calling add by passing 2, and this function is what it is returning. It is returning add 1 function, and add one's immediate outer scope is the add function, right? So it can access the values which are defined in the add function, and add function is already returned, but that value is persisted inside the closure of the add one function. You can see this is the add one function's scope. There is a closure, and inside the closure we are having 2. Now this x can again be called, right, with some value 6. You are getting the sum, right? Now you are calling this function again by and passing some value. So you are passing b, so it will return a plus b. So this is one of the good example which people use to explain the closure, right? So what is happening in the closure example here? Let me write it in the different way. So either you can also write it in this way. It will give you 30, right? Similarly, if you can have one more nested function where you are accepting the argument c and returning a plus b plus c. So when you are actually just calling add with the argument 7, you are actually doing a partial invocation of the function, because that function again returning another function. So either you assign this function to something else and I call it again by passing some other argument, then you will get the value, right? So this is a very basic example of closure. When you are calling add 7 is being stored inside the closure of the inner function scope, and whenever you are calling that function again, then it is calculating 7 plus 3 and giving you the 10. But what this is called a partial invocation, and closures, sorry, curry function is built on top of the closures. So this is the basic example, right? There can be one more example where you might be returning, so function this, right? Now you can have another function add 2 and you are passing c as an argument, and what this function is giving you a plus b plus c, and from this function you are actually returning add 2, right? So add 1 is add 2 is returning add 1. Let me just check the indentation and all. Okay, so this is my add 1 function which will be returning add 2 function, and add 2 function is this, right? So you can call this for a1 equal to add 2, and if you do the console.dir, a1 has a 3 scope, and inside the closure you can see a2 is being persisted, right? So similarly you can again just call this either a partial invocation, or you can just trigger call this like this, right? So a1 will give you the 10. So what it is, this is actually the partial invocation, and you are actually keep calling this. Now a1 again pass the second argument, assign it to or a2, sorry. Now again, and again call this a2 with passing some another value, right? Okay, I did something wrong. This is a2, so a1 a2, yeah, right? So this is how the chaining is happening, right? So we are actually partially invoking the first, then values are being stored in the closure of the inner function, then again we are calling the outer inner functions. If there is further inner function, those values are being stored in the closures of those, right? So this is how the curry functions and the closures works, right? You are actually keep calling this function. So whenever you are calling the add function, this is actually returning this function, which is a partial invocation. You again need to call add 1, then you again need to call add 2. This is called the concept of currying in JavaScript. Welcome back everyone. So this is the last video of the basic, So what all different things we have covered? Let's do a quick recap. So in the basic, this is the last video and we have already done each and every basic aspects of JavaScript. We talk about the data types, right? We talk about the objects, the data type which are being represented by the objects, like type of string, type of array, type of functions, all these things we have covered. Then we talk about the programming construct like loops, the conditional statement, do while loop, for loop, foreign loop, for of loop, if else if, switch, all these things we have covered. So loops and the conditionals. Then we talk about the strings, right? How the strings behaves in JavaScript, string prototype methods and the array prototype methods. We also talked about the function prototypes, how we are creating the function prototypes. Similarly, the object proto. We talked about the relationship between the prototype and the proto. We discussed how the proto chain works, how the prototype chain works. We talked about the capital O object and its methods like object.assign, object.create, and the shallow copy, deep copy, all these various aspects of objects. We talk about object.define property, define properties, object.clone, all these aspects. We talk about the function hoisting, variable hoisting. We talk about how to create a function, how to call a function, what is the arguments in the function. Okay, then how to create an object, what are the different ways to create an object using the new keyword, new object, object function, or using object.create, or simply object literal, and how we are inheriting the object properties from one object to another object using object.assign, object.create. Okay, we talked about the proto property on an object and the proto chaining until unless we reach to the capital object. So we talked about the array prototype, string prototype, object methods. Okay, this is all about the basic of JavaScript. In the further, we will add more on to the curry functions, closures. We will talk about the higher order functions. We will talk about the ES6 concepts. We'll talk about the call, apply, bind. We'll talk about the lexical scope binding. We'll talk about arrow functions, how they are fixing the problems in the JavaScript, how we can make a AJAX call, the fetch APIs and all. We'll talk about in the advance, and further we'll talk about the ES8 and all. That's it. Thanks everybody.